Mike Mills, you've got the two hometown girls that love you the most in the room with you.
I feel loved already.
You
Thank
should. I haven't seen you in so many years. I can't even tell you. It's so strange.
We see each other about every 6, 7, 8 years, something like that. Yeah.
Been a long time.
And I see you pop up on stage with people sometimes. And,
I've been known to do that.
which is cool. I heard you were just with Hootie and the Blowfish this past weekend.
Yeah, I was going to New York anyway, and then I found out they were playing, and I texted them. I said, "Hey, can I come see you play?" And they said, "Of course." And we didn't mention playing or anything until right before the show. And Darius walks up and says, "Okay, guitar on this and guitar on that." I said, "No, not on that one. How about this one?" And we sorted it out in about 10 seconds and had a great time.
Was I reading that you saw them many years ago, like before they got big in South Carolina? Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, I mean, I guess I don't know why I'd heard about them. I've had friends that were friends of theirs, and I guess maybe I'd heard they were big R.E.M. fans, and they played a lot of our songs in their show. So I saw them, back in a little tiny club somewhere in probably in Charleston.
That's something.
Yeah. So we've kept up over the years. We're good buddies. We've known each other a long time.
And then they've been playing "Losing My Religion" on tour. This whole reunion tour they've been doing, which is a nice little tribute.
They're very kind to acknowledge the influence.
Yeah.
So that was one of the songs we did in New York, and they're just a great bunch of guys and a lot of fun, and the current show is fantastic.
And it's doing so well at tour.
It is.
Selling out everywhere.
Well, it was an interesting. The New York Times did a whole 2-page spread that said, "Should we rethink Hootie and the Blowfish?" Yes,
Yeah.
I said.
Really?
And yeah.
That's cool.
Which is really cool. If you stick around long enough, even if you go out of fashion, you'll come back into fashion.
Absolutely.
That is
well,
very
Darius
true.
has been burning it at both ends.
Yeah,
hasn't
with
he?
country
Really.
and then coming back with Hootie.
he's huge.
What have you been doing most of for these past several years? I know you're doing music, and I know some of those things, but I want to hear it from you.
It's really, aside from goofing off and playing golf and relaxing, most of my work has been around this and that and the other. I play with the baseball project a lot. We just played at the Roxy before the Braves game a few weeks ago.
And what was that response like? First of all, the Roxy's a great room, isn't it?
It was. We had 600 or 800 people, I think, 600 people, and it's all songs about baseball, so everybody there was a baseball fan. So that went really well. We really enjoyed doing it, and got to see the Braves game after that, which is cool.
And Peter plays with you in that.
Peter did this time. He doesn't always tour with us.
Okay.
He's on the records. I wasn't on until the third record, but he's always on the records. He used to play bass with them, and now I play bass. So when they tour, I'm the touring bass player, and Peter comes along to play guitar sometimes.
That's great. That's great.
So yeah, and then we have a band called the -5 that is sometimes similar people. My friend Scott McCoy, who's an amazing story. He had a stroke about a year and a half ago, and they told him he'd probably never walk again, and now he's touring and playing guitar and singing, and all his songs that he's written a million of. And so his band is called the -5, and that has a rotating cast of characters, of which I am often one. So we just did some really cool shows. David Lowery was nice enough to invite us. Camper Van Beethoven Cracker does a show in the desert every year, Pappy and Harriet's, and this was the last one they were doing. So they had Camper open, and then the -5 played in the middle, and then Cracker closed the show. And it was just really, really sweet of David Lowery to invite us out there, and we had a really good time.
That's great. And what about anything of your very own that you're just...
Well, the concerto is mostly mine. The story behind that is about 5 years ago or so, my friend Robert McDuffie, who is a world-class violinist, solo violinist, classical violinist, tours the world playing with symphonies all over the place.
From Macon originally, right?
From Macon.
Yeah.
We were high school buddies in Macon, and... he asked me a few years ago. He said, "I'm tired of playing music by dead white European males. Will you write something new?" It's just a laugh for us. But I said, "Yeah, okay, sure." So I put together this thing. It's called a Concerto for Violin, Rock Band, and String Orchestra, and we've been playing that all over the place. With all kinds of symphonies all over the country, and that's really fun. So we decided we wanted to try and tour it a little bit, but to tour something that's only a half hour long, you need another piece to the program. So what we've done is add. I had the idea of, since I'm from Georgia and Bobby's from Georgia, let's see if we could make it a night of Georgia music and figure out a way to play. The first half would be songs by either about Georgia or by people from Georgia. And so we said, well, there are a million of those. That's easy. So who's going to play them with us? And we were like, okay, well, who's from Georgia that's more talented than both of us? Well, there's only one answer. That's Chuck Lavelle. So we approached Chuck, and he was kind enough to agree. And so now we're trying to do this little mini tour of A Night of Georgia Music.
That's
a
well, I
great
just saw
idea.
Chuck Leavell this past weekend with the Stones, right? In
Yeah,
Denver.
I told him. I said, come on to the more important stuff.
There
and
you go.
Leave that Stones mess behind. No, he's just an amazing individual, amazing player, just a force.
And I like to say he's a tree farmer in
He
Dry
is.
Branch, Georgia.
I
That is what
know.
he really does.
He's
He
got
is
an
that.
interesting background. But how long do you and Chuck go back?
We go back a long way, more peripherally than directly. The first time we ever played together, though, it's so weird that it took us this long, was about 8 or 9, maybe 10 years ago at my friend Buck Williams' daughter's wedding. Chuck was invited because he'd known the kids longer than I have. And we jammed at the wedding dinner, after the wedding dinner.
What did you jam to?
We played Statesboro Blues.
Awesome.
I think we played Don't Go Back to Rockville, and I can't remember what the third song was.
That's
But
fantastic.
Bill Berry was there. It was just a pretty wonderful night.
How did I miss Bill Berry? He's like you are to me. I just think that you guys are the most down to earth, lovely, talented guys. How's he doing?
He's doing great, thank you. He's back into music. He's actually playing. I hope I'm not premature
That's
by
okay because I
announcing
read
this.
something.
What?
I read something.
Oh, good.
So
Yes.
go
Well,
ahead,
the Fox Theater has this incredible foundation where they help out small towns. I don't know if it's only in Georgia or in the Southeast, but they help out small towns revitalize their local theater.
Mm-hmm.
And they did that with a little place in Winterville, Georgia. And so Bill Berry's going to sit in with this guy, Dodd Farrell, who's the mayor of Winterville. And they're going to play at the Fox, I guess, like 15, 16 September, something like that. I don't know the exact
Right,
date.
it's the revitalization or the night of Fox tribute music or
Kevin
something.
Kennedy.
Something
Yeah.
about something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know any details about it except that Bill's playing, and that's worth going to.
The
That's
price of
awesome. I didn't
admission
realize
for
he was
sure.
going to be there because it's a pretty
He's-
cool lineup they've got at that.
Yeah,
anyway.
it is.
And
And he's such
He'll
a
probably
lovely
hate me
guy.
for doing that. Now he's on the spot, but that's
Yeah, that's all right.
Hey, he's going to be there anyway.
I
so
know, it's the Fox.
It's
It's
not
a-
sign him
that's
up
right.
for it.
That's right.
It's okay.
So how many of these shows are you doing of the Georgia music?
We're just doing 4, basically because no one knows what this is, and it hasn't really been done in this sort of format. Like, what's a concerto? What's this night of Georgia music? Nobody's going to sing. People can't get over the fact that nobody's going to sing. Well, when you have 2 instrumentalists like Chuck and Bobby, you just
Yeah.
don't need anybody singing. So we're doing just the 4 days. We're trying to see if it'll work. Basically, we want to see if there's an audience for it. See if the promoters are going to be willing to take it on, and if it works, then we'll make it a bigger tour and go around the country with it.
Tell us how it's set up right now to do.
Well, we started at the Atlanta Symphony Hall on September 29th, and then
Is
we've
Chuck
got,
done with the Stones by then? Or the
I hope
Stones?
so.
Yeah.
Is it over?
End of this month.
I
Yeah.
hope he's done a week before that for rehearsals,
So
but
rehearse, 'cause
it's going to be
otherwise
pretty
it's gonna be
improvisational.
an
Otherwise,
interesting-
no, it's I think for Chuck it's kind of improvisational anyway. He doesn't, he's just so talented. I think he could just sit down and say, okay, we're going to play Rainy Night in Georgia, and he'd be fine with it. So we'll do that, and then we've got a show in Birmingham on the 2nd, then Savannah on the 4th, and Augusta on the 5th, I think, of October.
So the first part you decided was going to be about either Georgia musicians
yeah.
or music about Georgia.
Exactly.
Then what?
And then the concerto.
Oh,
So
and
there's a
you've
little
written it-
break, and then the concerto, and then there's kind of a fun surprise song for the encore that I'm not giving away. But the opening part is going to include, Midnight Train to Georgia, Rainy Night in Georgia, Georgia on My Mind, and then a bunch of songs that are by Georgia, like we'll do a Graham Parsons song because he grew up in Waycross, and we'll do. I think we're going to do an Outcast song. So,
That's cool.
it's going to be a pretty wide variety of Georgia artists.
That's really cool.
What was the process of the discussion of what are we going to do and are we going to throw an Outcast song in there kind of thing? Have you guys gotten the set list whittled down yet, or?
It's almost there. We did a lot of brainstorming. I'm sort of the final arbiter of what gets played and what doesn't. But I have to give a big shout out to my arranger, David Malamud. He arranged all the stuff for the concerto, and now he is the one who's arranging the string orchestra and Bobby's violin part for this stuff. And basically, so I give him the song. He brings me an arrangement, and we hammer that out for a while and get that to where we're both happy with it, and then we see if that's going to fit. Is this going to work with Bobby on violin and Chuck on piano? We've got a rock band that I'm playing bass. We got John Neff on guitar, William Tonks on guitar, and Patrick Ferguson on drums. All Athenians, the same guys have been playing the concerto with me all these years. So that's the band, and so I just had to decide: is this song going to work in this format? And most of them have. There's still a couple that I could either take out or leave in. But it's almost there.
don't hate me for being so naive about this. The concerto is something you wrote.
Yes, the concerto I wrote. So that's the second half of the show, and that's
How long ago did you write it? It's been a
about
while.
5 years. About 5 years, and Bobby and I have been doing it all over the place. The last place we played it, I think, was in Fort Worth with the Fort Worth Symphony. We've played it in Aspen, and Toronto, and Macon. We did a little mini tour with it a few years ago. Played about 12 cities. So it's getting out there. We're getting requests to play it
Tell me about
here and
writing
there.
a concerto. What made you tell me?
Well, what made me do it is I'm an idiot, but really, it was just such a challenge. I grew up
Did
with
somebody
class-
ask you to? Or?
Bobby is the one that commissioned me to do it. Bobby also commissioned Philip Glass to write what's known now as the American Four Seasons. So Bobby really likes getting American composers. One thing we're trying to do is I grew up a big fan of classical music. My father was a dramatic tenor, sang opera. So
Wow.
what we're trying to do is show the world that there's no hard barrier between rock music and classical music. They can coexist. And this isn't just rock songs that have been turned into an orchestrated thing. This is songs that were written specifically for violin, rock band, and string orchestra. And I won't say it's never been done before, but in this particular format, it's relatively untested. So it was just, for me, it was a huge challenge to try to see if I could write stuff that would be worthy of Bobby's playing. And that's where David Malamud came into play a lot, because I don't really know how to write for violin, but I can write great melodies, and David can help me extrapolate them into violin parts. And that's how this whole thing came about.
How long is it?
It's 30 minutes, roughly. A concerto. The definition of a concerto is roughly 30 minutes. It's instrumental, and it features the virtuosity of the soloist, which in this case is Bobby. So Chuck's in the first half. We're all in the first half, and then it's me and Bobby playing the concerto in the second half, and then Chuck comes back for a fun little encore.
And how long did it take you to write?
Yeah, weird. The first song took just a few days, and then it bogged down, as writing often does. It took me some months to do it. And, of course, I'm working on the very last song on the last day I'm supposed to take it in and record it. That's just the way that works. But it took a while. But sometimes, so it's like my manager, Bertus, always says, musicians need a deadline. Mm-hmm. And songwriters need a deadline, and it really helps if you have one.
Yeah, that's kind of like homework, too.
Yeah, exactly.
But now I'm
Right.
thinking, okay, Everybody Hurts, one of my favorite R.E.M. songs. You bring John Paul Jones in from Led Zeppelin to work with you on that. How much of that were you involved in that orchestration and the strings and that? How did that work for you?
That was all Jonesy. I had done some string arranging, Losing My Religion. I had done most of that stuff, but this is a whole different cat. So and Jonesy's amazing. He's writing an opera right now. But he came in and he just did this beautiful, beautiful stuff that really took that record to another level. So you were a fan, obviously. You're saying as a child you're a fan of this kind of music, classical music. But did you realize that he was capable of doing it? I was so shocked that he was on that record. I knew he'd written the strings for Kashmir. I knew he'd done that for Zepp, but I didn't know he was available for hire as a string arranger. Scott Litt said, "Hey, why don't we call John Paul Jones? What are we going to say to him?" He said, "No, he does this sort of thing. He likes to do this." So we said, "Oh, great!" So he heard some of the stuff and thought he could work with it, and he came down and we had a lot of fun.
I was going to say, were you blown away? I mean, Led Zeppelin growing up was one of my favorites of all time. Of course.
Oh yeah, well it's big. He hadn't quit drinking when he came down here at that point, so he and I went out on a couple of fun nights.
Nice. Went bowling, played basketball, golfing. That kind of
maybe
stuff.
some balls involved. Yes.
That's awesome.
Well, it's funny when you say that people can't get past the fact on this show that there's no singing, because I noticed on the website when it was first announced, it was prominently noted on there several times.
So annoying.
There will be no singing at this concert,
Pointless.
and it's funny to think that there would be people who might not want to go because there's no singing, but they're still the same songs. There's still the same essence of what you guys are trying to do.
Yes, and but between a violin and a piano, you can express as much or more emotions as a human voice can, and it's all about the melody and the virtuosity of these two instrumentalists. So. Chuck's a great singer, and he could have sung, but at the same time, I was trying to keep, since there's no singing in the concerto, I tried to keep it constant and consistent with the opening part.
Were there some artists, going back to the set list of what you're going to play, that you absolutely said, we've got to have these people, that we cannot do a show about Georgia music without including so and so?
I mean, there's so many you could say that about.
Yeah.
Certainly I wouldn't want to leave Ray Charles out. I'm struggling with Otis Redding. I don't want to leave him out, but he may not make it. Not because of anything except that does it translate to what we're trying to do here. I was really there was never any doubt about putting Gladys Knight in there. That was always a no-brainer. I'm working on a B-52s track to see if I can make that adapt to what we're trying to do. I'm not sure it can. Their stuff isn't necessarily orchestratable, but we're
Although
trying.
they did play with the symphony a few years ago, but I know what you're saying. It's different when you're trying to adapt it a certain way.
Yeah. If we had them on stage, it would be no-brainer. Right. I really wanted to get Graham Parsons in there because I'm a huge fan, and then he does have a Georgia connection. So certainly those things had to be part of the show.
That's really cool. And I was Melissa and I just saw Rick Springfield with the ASO. And really and truly, it's amazing how rock can blend in with the orchestra. It's amazing to me.
Well, we do have we got a rock band. We've got 2 guitars, bass, and drums. We're actually using, for this little tour, we're using the kids from Bobby. Bobby opened up a music school at Mercer University some years ago, the McDuffie Center for Strings, and it now rivals Juilliard and Berkeley in terms of the quality of kids that want to come to this school. So we're actually using their students as the orchestra, which is very exciting. They're the ones that played on the CD that we put out, or it's not the same kids, but it was kids from the school.
Cool.
I say kids, they're young adults, but we're very excited that they're going to be the orchestra to play along with us.
And they must be more excited. Yeah.
Right, so you've got an orchestra and a full band.
Right. We got, it's probably going to be down, looks like about a 12-piece orchestra, and then 4-piece rock band, and then Chuck on piano.
That's a lot of people.
It is.
It's a bigger production than I think maybe some people thought, because I think a lot of people were under the impression it was just the 3 of you on stage.
Oh, yeah. Well, the funny thing about the concerto is really, I hate this word, but scalable. We've performed it with the Toronto Symphony, which was their full string orchestra, which is 30 players maybe. And then we also do a chamber music version that we played in Rome, Italy at Bobby's festival over there that had, I think, 5 strings. So it works on almost any number of strings. So in this case, I think we got 12, which will be nice and full, but you can hear the individual strings, which is nice too.
What's it like to have a piece of yours and then to hear all, because that sound is just phenomenal.
Well,
right?
the best thing about it is when we were on tour doing it before, it's like, okay, first we're going to do the Adams Road movies, and then we're going to play the Mills. So it's like, it's the Mills now. Great. So it's the Mills Concerto, which is like, okay, I can just go ahead and die now because I have a concerto with my name on it.
You have a title. You have the Mills.
The Mills, yes. When was the first time you heard it, though, with a full orchestra behind it? Was it early on?
Rehearsal in Toronto. I think Toronto was the first time we ever played it. The conductor is a very kind and brave man who let us put it on up there, and so that's the first time I heard it with the full orchestra, and it was amazing. It was stunning.
That's fantastic.
What about the production? Are you doing anything in particular to highlight Georgia people or anything like that?
You mean in terms of visuals?
Yeah.
Well, not really. No, there's no. This is not the highest budget thing that's ever been done. We're just focused on the music. We'll have some nice lighting and all that. But really, I mean, when you've got Robert McDuffie and Chuck Leavell on stage, you don't need to worry about peripherals.
Right.
You're exactly right. People are going to be wanting to watch all of you.
Yeah.
Including you.
Yes, including me. That's the thing. I almost forget what I'm playing because I'm listening to Bobby play, so it's fun stuff.
Well, how much of an influence have Georgia musicians been on you and your career? Because obviously, if you wanted to do something like this, it must be something meaningful to you to pull out all these years later.
Sure, that's a very good question. I grew up in Atlanta, and then I lived in Macon a lot of my formative years from 71 to 78, which is when I met Bobby. But I mean, obviously, you can't live in Macon and be a rock and roller in those times and not be an Allman Brothers fan.
Right.
So I was obviously a huge Allman Brothers fan. We're going to do a couple of their songs. We're going to do one Greg Allman's version of Midnight Rider, not the Allman Brothers version, but Greg's solo version from Laid Back, which is really beautiful.
It is.
So that part, huge influence on me in every way. Barry Oakley, of course, as a bass player, was a big influence on me. But growing up in Georgia, you get the blues, you get country, you get all this stuff. So I was just absorbing every bit of it. So, Ray Charles is in my head, and Graham Parsons is in my head, and a lot of voices in there.
I love when you keep talking about Graham. I saw the Byrds recently do Sweetheart of the Rodeo.
Oh, I wish I'd seen that.
It was crazy good.
Yeah.
It was so good. But we interviewed. Were you with me?
No,
in
no.
the interview? Okay, well, we won't go into it. But we talked a lot about Graham, which was so interesting.
Yeah.
You know, it was just.
Well, that's funny
fascinating.
because the thing that we just did. The camp out I was talking about with Camper, Van Beethoven, and Cracker, that's at Pappy and Harriet's Pioneer Town in Joshua Tree. And and so I stayed at the Joshua Tree Inn.
That crazy
where
story.
Graham died. Yeah, it was. I wasn't in the. They have a little cottage in the back where I stayed, but we went by his room, and there's a memorial outside the room, and of course you take pictures and everything. So that was exciting to be there.
That's really cool. Plus, he brought that to the country sound really big time, right?
Well, yeah, he and the Byrds really helped create that country rock thing that is so cool and so widespread now.
And that's kind of you too. That reminds me of some of your solo.
Well, Graham wore some nice suits.
Yeah, there you go. He sure did.
I mean, I got my initial influence on those suits was from watching the Porter and Dolly show back in the old days. They had. Porter and Dolly would do a song, and then it would walk off to the side set and sell you boxes of Breeze detergent, and in every box of Breeze you get a free towel. I don't know if y'all remember that, but they would include a dish towel in a box of detergent you could get. Anyway, the cool thing was that Porter Wagoner's suits, the sequins were so bright and the irises of the cameras were so slow back then that if a sequin hit the camera directly with light, the iris would close. So the whole screen would go dark and then go bright again.
No way.
Yeah. And I said, well, shoot, I want to do that. I don't know when I'll do it, but I want to. And then, later on you see Graham wearing stuff like that. I said, well, I'm going to try that someday.
You did it. Have you ever? Who's the guy in Hollywood that makes the amazing jackets?
Well, it was made famous by a man named Nudie, but his main tailor was Manuel, and Manuel has a shop in Nashville. All my suits are made by Manuel. Manuel
they
of
are?
Nashville,
Okay.
yes. So Manuel of Nashville is the guy. He's 90-something and still plugging away. I think his son does most of the work now. But Manuel of Nashville, Manuel's of Nashville is a great store. If you're in Nashville, go down to Broadway and check it out.
And he's
Just
still alive.
Just to look at it is just brilliant. Yeah.
That's
He's still alive.
Melissa and I were interviewing John Fogerty on stage with Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top, and we were doing a Facebook Live, and so the Facebook Live people were going, "Tell us about John's jacket." It was that one with all the planets on it, right? That Petty was wearing it in
nice.
Back Up the Plantation, and he goes, "Oh, this guy Nudie, right?" And he's talking about him, and then I looked at Billy, kind of feeling sorry for him. He had on this cool black jacket, and I'm like, "Well, who made your jacket?" He goes, "Nudie did." Same guy as his, and they looked at each other, and go, "What?"
Is that right?
So, but your stuff reminds me a little bit of that too. So that's
It's all
cool.
the same chain right there. Yeah.
That's interesting.
That's cool.
Cool
Where
stuff.
do you live? You're in Atlanta now, right? Or
No, I'm Athens still.
you're in Athens still? Yeah.
Drove over today.
But you're. Oh, thank you.
Oh,
Thank you for coming in for
doing
that.
that.
It's my
Yeah.
pleasure. I appreciate y'all helping me with this.
Are you kidding?
Well, I know your Braves allegiance is very, very strong.
Yes.
That's true. I may go to the game tonight. I don't know yet.
While
What
you're
do
in
you-
town, why not, right?
What do you think of the Roxy? I just loved it. I did an event there not too long ago in that room.
Oh, I loved it. I saw it before. I think it was opening night this year or last year. I can't remember exactly which year it opened, but
Last year.
last year they had an event where you could go in and they were live streaming. I think it was McCartney or Springsteen, one or the other. They were live streaming it on the big screen, so you could sit there in the Roxy, get a cocktail, and sit down and watch it live stream. Yeah, it was so.
That's cool. We missed that.
I don't know. We weren't invited to that one. Why not?
Well, I had to. I had to steal it. Not steal, but a friend of mine gave me a ticket, or I wouldn't have gotten in myself.
That's cool. But
really
it's a
cool.
great room. I
Yeah.
love that. And do you like the whole idea of the battery? Do you go to many games?
I I have season tickets. I go to as many as I can.
That's awesome.
The battery's cool. It's a little crowded, I mean, it's
Yeah.
like the idea is so good that so many people want to do it that it's kind of
Everybody's
almost
there.
impossible to get a seat somewhere. But
Yeah.
but yeah, having a hotel really close to the thing. I go to Murph's. Now that is a place that I will go.
There you
Get
go.
some
That's great.
deep fried cheese curds at Murph's, and that's a treat. That's good food.
Cheese curds are always good. Yeah. One obvious thing I forgot to ask about the songs you'll be doing on the show, R.E.M.
Yeah, we got.
Good for you.
Well,
Just dawned on me. Oh, yeah.
Well, when I wrote the concerto, Bobby said I got one stipulation: is that night swimming has to be a part of it. So night swimming is one of the movements of the concerto, which is really it's almost more of a song suite than an actual concerto of movements. But night swimming is part of it. And then I have an R.E.M. song that's in the opening part as well, but I'm thinking of changing it to a different one. So there will be an R.E.M. song in the Night of Georgia Music with Chuck and Bobby playing, but I'm just not sure which one it is yet.
That makes sense.
Have you played Symphony Hall? Probably no.
Gosh, I don't think I've played it. I've seen a lot of things there.
Room for sound,
The sound
isn't
is
it?
great.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, we're so happy to be there. And I'm so glad they took that disclaimer off the website about it.
We know singing.
We finally got to say, look, what's the point of that? I mean, we're not trying to fool anybody here.
That's
Just
right.
take that thing off of there. No, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to play there because I've certainly been to enough shows there.
It's a
very
beautiful
cool.
venue.
It is. It is.
And by the way, I'm giving away tickets all this week for the show. So
Thank you.
Yeah, but I'm
That's
excited that now
wonderful.
I have more to be able to say about
yeah,
it, knowing more
yeah,
about it.
Yeah.
That's
no.
cool. I have to go off topic a little bit because you know Andy Slater.
Yeah, I listened to some of that podcast.
Oh, did you, Jay?
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really cool. Did you watch the movie yet?
Yes, I was actually in L.A. when they did the premiere. This has been 6 or 8 months ago. They did the actual very first premiere at the beautiful John Anson Ford Theater in Hollywood. And I went to see it because I've known Andy for forever and ever, and I know Jacob a little bit, and it was wonderful. I thought it was. I thought, like you said, it was interesting that they had to compress it into that particular time slot, which seems like it leaves some things out. But on the other hand, you could spend hours talking about all the influences and things that came out of Laurel
That's right.
Canyon. But I thought it was great that they got all the interviews that they did. I thought the new live stuff was very well done. I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. I thought Jacob's even though he's a frontman for a band, he's kind of a shy guy. He's not a real get out in front of everybody kind of person. So to get him to do that, I thought was fascinating. That some good work on Andy's part to make that happen.
Melissa, you have to tell him what you had to say about that.
Well, it was just to me, it was just funny that every time they showed Jacob, you never actually saw him asking any question. He was just
Sitting there nodding.
listening. And I just wished one time you would actually have seen him ask the question on camera.
I think that's probably his decision. He's like, no, I'm not talking. You can get my face.
And he
but
could
that's
get away
it.
with just looking, just saying, because he's so handsome.
Slouching.
Exactly,
But what I want to
exactly.
ask you, I'm setting it up to say Warren Zevon's one of my favorites.
Oh, thank you.
And
Yeah,
I
me too.
loved that Sentimental Hygiene album. Loved
Thank
it.
you, thank you.
You worked with him.
We did.
Do you mind telling me a little bit about that?
Oh no! Well, I mean,
experience?
Warren was a great guy. Andy, of course, got us together when he got him to deal with Virgin. The point was to try to make a record that wasn't all his LA session buddies, so it would sound differently. And Andy said, "Well, I know this hot rock band that'll do it with you," and so we did. And Warren was the greatest guy. We just had a tremendously great time together. I was really glad I got to know him. Musically, he's astounding. I voted for him. Last time I was at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame over All-Star Baseball weekend. I kept pushing the button to, get Warren Zevon in there. It's
Oh, he's not in there.
I don't think he is in there. If he is, I'm
think you're
sadly
right.
mistaken, but I don't think so.
Yeah. That's right.
So that's a crime if he's not in there already.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just a loon. He got this big advance. And so he went out and paid cash for a Corvette, and he can't drive. And he came to pick me up once for the session, and he's running over curbs.
He's actually driving.
Oh my God! I was fearing for my life.
Yeah.
I said, Warren, do you have a license? Well, not yet, but I will. I'm like, oh my God. Okay.
Is this in New York too, of all
No, this
places?
is in L.A.
Oh, in LA.
Oh
even
my
better.
God.
He's an
even
LA
worse.
guy, so this is all Los Angeles. Yeah. So we managed to make it to the studio safely and just had the best time recording that record.
I love hearing
Now,
that.
did you know Andy from when Andy was here in Atlanta? Or
Yes. Andy and Peter knew each other at Emory.
That's right. He told us that.
And
Yeah.
Andy got us a show. The Emory Law School had a graduation party, and this was obviously a long time ago. So we agreed to do. I think we did 2 sets. That's how long ago it was. And in between the sets, they had a burlesque dancer, and her boombox quit working. So she was like, "Will you guys back me up?" And Peter's like, "No way." And Bill and I were, "Yes, of course we will." So,
we can sit right here.
So she had some nice bass and drum slinky groove going on behind her while she danced. So that was my first experience with Andy.
With Andy, well, he's done pretty well for himself.
Yeah.
He certainly
As
has.
have you, which
He's
makes
kind
me
of
so happy.
zealot, that guy. He just turns up in the most amazing places.
No kidding.
I know. It was really fascinating to get to talk to him and hear about his whole background here, and that he used to be the music critic at the AJC. Back
That I
in-
did not know.
Which was
that
funny.
that was news
Yeah.
to me. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's had an interesting career. Did you happen to see the R.E.M. bio that came out recently? The Begin.
I don't know.
Do you guys have? So you guys don't really have anything to do with?
Well, some we do. I feel like the last R.E.M. thing I saw was the R.E.M. TV, which was some years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I know this new thing.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah, I mean,
I was just curious how much input you
Or
ever
if you
have.
care,
So-
right?
Or,
Yeah.
well,
it
or how much input
depends.
you don't have. Apparently.
Yeah, well, sometimes we just give them a tacit blessing because I mean you can't really stop
Right.
anybody
Right.
from you
Right.
know, talking about you.
Sure.
Most of it we just say fine, you go ahead and we'll stay out of it. The R.E.M. TV thing, of course, that we were very very involved in that, but some of this stuff it just happens and I find out about it later.
Right. Well, it's a legacy. Yeah. That's-
Exactly. Yeah.
which
And
is a
that's
nice thing.
good. Yeah, I'm glad people haven't forgotten.
Exactly.
Oh, no kidding. So proud of you. Honestly,
Oh,
it
thank you.
is one of those things just to think all these years and you're one of the greatest.
But what keeps you here? That's one thing that I'm always curious about. People who have stayed in Georgia when you could be lots of other
Yeah.
places. And
Well, I am lots of other places.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I travel a lot. I actually have a second home in Los Angeles that I get to when I can, but I don't want to leave here. This is I have my friends and family are here. I love the Georgia heat. Believe it or not, no.
well, you must love this.
No, I tell you, I was walking around yesterday, and it was 98 and 99% humidity, and I just said, "Remember February, remember February," and I have no problem with it at all. So I love being here. It's my home, and I think of Georgia as my home, and always will.
Well, we cannot wait to see you at Symphony Hall. What a cool thing to know that will be your first performance there, and with some good friend. Well, Chuck Leavell, but I'm excited about Robert McDuffie too.
I know
Here
because we
and
haven't
seeing
seen him. Yeah.
Oh,
we know Chuck pretty well.
He's
but,
amazing. It's
Yeah.
two huge talents on this stage.
And hearing your concerto live will be
It
the
will-
Mills.
it'll
We'll
be
get
the
to hear the
Mills.
Mills.
That's right.
Oh, Mike, anything else you want to say, like to anybody in Atlanta that you love, or just anything about anything?
Wow, no, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you guys for having me here and doing this. I really enjoyed the podcast with Andy. That was totally cool. And
So
best
he
of luck.
listens to two girls talking.
know.
That just made
Somebody
my day
listens
that you
to
heard
us, and
it.
it's
That's
Mike
cool.
Mills.
That's right.